Hi, this is Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, and you're listening to Briefings Direct. Our next technology innovation thought leadership discussion explores how rapid advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning are suddenly poised to reshape procurement, like a fast-forwarding to a once fanciful vision of the future. Whereas George Jetson of the 1960s cartoon portrayed a world of household robots, flying cars, and push-button corporate jobs, the 2017 procurement landscape has its own impressive landscape of decision bots, automated processes, and data-driven insights. As we enter 2017, applied intelligence derived from entirely new data analysis benefits has redefined productivity and provided businesses leaders with unprecedented tools for managing procurement, supply chains, and continuity risks. To learn more about the future of predictive and even proactive procurement technologies, please join me in welcoming back Chris Hayden, Chief Strategy Officer at SAP Ariba. Good to have you with us, Chris.
Great to be here again.
You know, it seems like only yesterday that we were content to gain a common view of the customer or develop an end-to-end bead on a single business process. These were our goals in refining business in general. But today we've sort of leapfrogged to a future where we're using words like predictive and proactive to define what business functions should do and be about. Chris, what's altered our reality to account for this sort of rapid advancement from visibility into predictive and proactive?
Yeah, thanks, Dana. Well, look, I think there's a couple of things. Just quite candidly, the acceleration of the smarts, the intelligence or the artificial intelligence, whatever the right terminology that you identify with, I think it's really exploded on us, and it's a lot more real. And you see these use cases on television all the time, and the business world is really just looking to go in and adopt that. And this notion of, if you like, the Lego block now of being able to string together multiple processes, right, together via an API is really exciting. And I think that, right, coupled with the ability to have insight. And then the last piece, of course, is just, you know, the ability to make sense of big data, either from a visualization perspective or from a machine learning perspective, has accelerated. So these three dimensions or these three trends are really starting to come together in the B2B world. And, of course, we're seeing them manifest themselves beginning today in procurement.
So that's, to me, an interesting question. What is it about procurement as a function that's especially ripe and adept for taking advantage of these technologies?
So procurement is obviously one, very transactionally intense. And historically, what does transactional intensity means? It means people. It means processing. It means exceptions. And so when we talked about these trends now, right, the ability to componentize services, the ability to look at big data and apply some machine learning, and then put on top of this contextualize this intelligence, cognitive predictive, on just by its very nature, a bigger data set, and actually a historically inefficient human-based process. I think that's why procurement's starting to be at the forefront of this.
And I think the procurement itself has changed from the days of when we were highly vertically integrated as corporations. We had long lead times on product cycles, and we were doing fulfillment. But nowadays, it's all about agility and compressing the time across the board. So procurement has elevated its position to that of a point pole position in an entire business capacity rather than a functional position. Anything more to add?
You're right. Look, everyone needs to be closer to the customer, right? And you need live business. So procurement is live now, right? And I think this changing dynamic of speed and responsiveness is core to it, to your point. To me, it's also this other dimension, I guess, of that consumer experience that is now has to be the business to business experience, and all that means same day shipping, real time visibility, changing dynamically. That's what we have to deliver.
So if we go back to our George Jetson reference, what is it about this year, 2017, do you think is an important inception point when it comes to factoring things like the rising role of procurement, the rising role of analytics, the fact that IoT is going to bring more relevant data to bear. Why now? What's the big inception point, do you think, that makes us so relevant now?
There's a couple of things you're right. I mean, the procurement function is becoming more mature, and they've extracted those first and second level of savings from sourcing and the like. And now they're really starting to look, and they have control of their processes. And with the cloud-based technologies and more control of their processes, they're really looking now to how they go and serve their internal customers. And how do they serve their internal customers? By being, value generators and risk reducers. How do you, for the business, how do you de-risk? How do you get supply chain continuity? How do you protect your brand? You do that by having better insight, real-time insight into your supply base. And that's what's driving this investment.
So we've been talking about Ariba now being a 20-year-old company. Congratulations on your anniversary of 20 years. You're also, of course, part of SAP. So not only have you been focused on procurement for 20 years, but you've got a large global player with lots of other technologies and platform benefits to avail yourselves of. So that brings me to the point of artificial intelligence and bots. It seems to me that right at the time when procurement needs help, when procurement is more important than ever, that we're also in a position technically to start doing some innovative things that gets us into those words predictive and gets us to more intelligent. So maybe set the stage a little bit for how these things come together and what we might expect to see as part and parcel within applications and services that we would generally classify as intelligent.
Absolutely. I mean, you allude to being part of SAP. And that is really what a great strength and advantage that is for a domain-focused procurement expertise company. The investments that the machine learning capabilities that's coming as part of the native HANA platform, which we just naturally adopt and get access to, right? Just puts us on the forefront of not having necessarily, if you like, to invest in that part of the platform, but really turn our focus on how we take the platform and put that into the context of procurement. I think there's a couple of pretty obvious areas. One is certainly, whether you want to call it smarter predictive invoicing. There's no doubt that when you've got the largest B2B network, billions in spend and hundreds of millions of transactions on invoicing, you apply some machine learning on that, we can start doing a lot smarter matching and exception management on that. Pretty straightforward, right? I think that's at one end of the chain. I think on the other end of the chain, when you think about, bots, and some people get a little bit worried about the word bot or robotics or whatever. Maybe it's a digital assistant or it's a smart app, however but I think this notion of helping with decisions, helping with real-time decisions, whether it's identifying a new source of supply because there's a problem, and the problem is identified because you've got a live network. And saying, hey, you have a risk or you have a continuity problem here, not just that it's happening, but here's an alternative. Here's other sources of qualified supply, and here's that impact.
So what strikes me about 2017 being such a pivotal year in business is I think this is the year where we're going to start to really define what machines do well and what people do well, and not to confuse them. So what is it about a end-to-end process in procurement that the machine can do better that we can then elevate the value in the decision-making process of the people?
I think there's a couple of things. The machines can do better in just identifying patterns, right? Clusters, if you want to use a more technical word. I think they transform category management. I think it enables procurement to be at the front of their internal customer set by looking not just at their traditional total cost of ownership, but total value in use. So that's a part of that, that real dynamic change. And I think the traditional, what we call end-to-end, or even what Ariba defined in a very loose way when we talked about upstream was about sourcing and contracting, and downstream was about procurement, purchasing and invoicing. That's gone, Dana. It's not about upstream and downstream. It's about end-to-end process, right? And reimagining and reinventing that.
When we give more power to a procurement professional by having highly elevated and intelligent tools, their role within the organization, of course, advances. The amount of improvement they can make financially advances. But I wonder where there's risk if we automate too much, and whether companies might be thinking, I still want my people in charge of these decisions. Where do we start perhaps experimenting with how much automation to bring now that we know how capable these machines have been? Or is this going to be a period of exploration for the next few years?
No, I think it'll be a period of exploration, just because, quite honestly, businesses just have different risk tolerances, and they're actually different parts of their life cycle. I mean, if you're in hyper growth mode and you're pretty profitable, that's a little bit different if you're under very big margin pressure. For example, maybe if you're in high tech in the valley, and some big names that we could all talk about, they are prepared to be able to go at it and let it all go. If you're in a natural resource environment, every dollar is even more precious than it was a year ago. And I think that's also the beauty, though, of technology. If I want to do it for this category or this supplier or this business unit or this division, you can do that a lot easier than ever before. And so you go on a journey. You don't necessarily have to go to big bang.
So that's an important point that people might not appreciate, that there's a tolerance for your appetite for how much automation and intelligence and using machine learning and AI. It might even change given the context of the certain procurement activity you're doing within the same company. So maybe you could help people who are a little bit leery of this, thinking that they're losing control. Sounds to me like they're actually gaining more control.
Yeah, I think they can gain control. I mean, I think that they gain more control because they can actually do more and see more. If the first bot is about, to me it's layers. So does the first bot automatically requisition something, yes or no? And basically what you do is you put tolerance on it. I'm okay to do it if it's less than $50 or $5,000 or whatever the limit is. And very simple. If the event is less than $5,000 and it's within 1% of the last time I did it, go and do it. But tell me that you're going to do it. Or have a cooling off period. If you don't tell me, or if you don't stop me, I'm going to do it. And that's a little bit of this predictive as well, right? So you still control the gate. You just don't have to be involved in all the sub-processes and all that stuff to get to the gate. Yeah.
Yep. What's interesting to me as well, Chris, is the data being such a core element of how successful this is means that companies in a procurement intelligence drive will want more data because then they can make better decisions. Yes. Suppliers who want to be competitive in that environment will naturally be incentivized to provide more data, more quickly, more openness. Tell us some of the implications for intelligence brought to procurement on the supplier, what we should expect suppliers to do differently as a result.
Yeah, no, great question. I think there's no doubt that, at a couple levels, suppliers obviously will need to let the buyers know even more about themselves than they've ever done before. So there's that. And then that goes to the notion of content, right? It's like you need content to be able to be discovered, right? Which is, who am I? What do I do well? And demonstrate to me that I do it well. That's being discovered. Then there's actually, if you like, the notion of being able to transact. And what do I need to be able to do to transact with you efficiently? And that's whether that's a payment or a bank account or just the way in which I can consume this. And then there's also this last notion of the content, right? What content do I need to be able to provide to my customer, aka the end user, for them to be able to initiate the business with me? So these three dimensions of being able to provide, just being discovered, how to be dynamically transacted with, and then actually providing the content of what you do, even as a material or service, to the end user via the channel. You have to have all of these dimensions right. That's why we fundamentally believe a network-based approach, when there's one to N, meaning a supplier can do it once to all of the customers across the discovery channel, across the transactional channel, across the content channel, is really valuable adding. And in the digital economy, that's the only way to do it.
So this idea of the business network, which in a sense is a virtual repository for all of this information, isn't just quantity. It's really as much, or if not more important, about the quality of the relationship. So we hear about different business networks vying for attention. It seems to me that understanding that quality aspect is something you shouldn't lose track of.
It's the quality. It's also, if you like, the context of the business process, right? If you don't have the context of the business process between a buyer and a seller and what they're trying to affect, the network, how does it add value? And again, the leading practice networks are thinking about, and we are a leading practice network, I believe, thinking about discovery, we're thinking about content, we're thinking about transactions.
Again, going back to the George Jetson view of the future, for organizations that want to see the return on their energy and devotion to these concepts around AI and bots and intelligence, what sort of low-lying fruit do we look for assuring them that they're on the right path? And I'm going to answer my own question, but I want you to illustrate it a bit better. And that's risk and compliance and being able to adjust to unforeseen circumstances seems to me an immediate payoff for doing this.
Oh, it is. I mean, look, I don't know the name of the law, but the United Kingdom, right, is basically enacting before the end of the year some slavery or forced labor in the supply chain. Okay, it's now law, so you have to comply. The real question is how you comply, right? I think also this notion of you are your brand, you are your supply chain, and so again, this having risk or the supplier profile information or your supply chain profile information right to hand right now is so top of mind because it would be, I guess, if you're a CPO and you walk into the CEO's office and the CEO goes to, well, can you tell me that I don't have any forced labor, I don't have any denied parties, I'm OFAC compliant, so on and so forth. Can you tell me that now? Like now? If you can't, you might be able to say, I can do it for my top 50 suppliers or my top 100 suppliers. That's great, but unfortunately, a small $2,000 supplier who uses some forced labor in any part of the world is potentially a problem in this extended supply chain. We've seen brands boycotted very quickly. These things roll. So yes, I think that's just right at the forefront, and then applying intelligence to that to give that risk threshold, to think about where those challenges are, even to be smart and saying, here's a high-risk category. Go and look at this category first and all the suppliers in the category. We're not saying that the suppliers are bad, but you better go have a double, triple look at that because you're at high risk just because of the nature of the category.
Mm-hmm. And technically, what should organizations be thinking about in terms of what to have in place in order for their systems and processes to take advantage of these business network intelligence values? So if I am intrigued by this concept, if I see the benefits in reducing risk and additional efficiency, what might I be thinking about in terms of my own architecture, my own technologies in order to be in a best position to take advantage of this?
Yeah, well, I think really it's about you got to question how much of that you think you can build yourself. And I think, we spoke earlier about if you think you're actually asking different questions than most of your competitors, you're actually probably not. I mean, I'm sure there's specific categories and specific areas on, tight supplier relationships and co-innovation development. But when it comes to the core risk questions, more often they're about an industry or a geography or the intersection of both, right? And so, recommendations to corporates is, you look not to try and, I would just never try and build it yourself. You might need to have some degree of private, but look to have it as it's more of an industry based and or think larger than yourself and trying to solve that problem differently. And I think that those cloud deployment models really help you.
So it really is less of a technical preparatory thought process than process being a digital organization, availing yourself of cloud models, being ready to think about acting intelligently and finding that right demarcation between what the machines do best and what the people do best.
I think so by making it digital, it's actually more visible, period. So you got to be able to balance just the pure nature of visibility to get at the problem. is the first step, right? That's why people are on the digital journey.
Machines can't help you with a paper-based process, right?
Oh, not as much. You've got to scan them and throw it into it, which is then you're digitizing it, right?
Okay, last point. We heard about guided buying last year from SAP Ariba. It sounds like we're going to be getting sort of guided buying plus next year, and we should keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're very excited. We announced that earlier this year, and look, we're trying to solve two problems quickly for guided buying, just for the audience. Mm-hmm. One is the nature of the ad hoc user. We're all ad hoc users in a business today. I need to buy things, but I don't want to read the policy. I don't want to open the PDF on some corporate portal on some threshold limit that, quite honestly, I really need to know about once or twice a year, right? So our guided buying just has a beautiful consumer-based, look and feel. But with embedded compliance, we hide the complexity. We just show the user what they need to know at the time in the flow. Very powerful.
Well, it certainly sounds like an area where intelligence would have a very marked improvement, so we'll look for some interesting news there as well. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. You've been listening to a Briefings Direct Thought Leadership podcast discussion on how rapid advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning are poised to reshape procurement. And we've heard how, as we enter 2017, applied intelligence derived from entirely new data analysis benefits redefines productivity. Lastly, we've been presented with SAP Ariba's view on where we can take business intelligence aspects into more types of process and more refinement of the procurement function. So with that, please join me in thanking our guest, Chris Hayden, Chief Strategy Officer at SAP Ariba. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And a big thank you as well to our audience for joining this SAP Ariba sponsored Business Innovation Thought Leadership discussion. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator. Thanks again for listening, and do come back next time.